Success is persistence. I will persist until I succeed. I will never consider defeat. I will remove from my vocabulary such words as quit, cannot, unable, impossible, hopeless, and retreat, for those are the words of fools. I will persist until I succeed.
You believe that relationship starts when you grow the food.
There's a level of fulfillment that you get from growing your own food that you can't get any other way in my experience. And that's why I love it so much. It nourishes you at many levels. So I don't feel that it's appropriate to be qualified to speak about food unless you grow it yourself, because there's such an amazing amount of information that can only be acquired that way. I do know from experience that the scientific method is not the only way we can know something. There's also just experience. The reason why they're so upset at me is because what I'm going after is their religion. Their atheistic, scientismic religion.
Science is wonderful. Who could not be turned on?
What is the thing that caused you to be so energetic that you do it 8 hours, you don't even realize 8 hours has gone by? That's the thing you need to be doing with your life. And if you can lock that in with your career so that you're making money doing that, so you can function in the world, then you have cracked the biggest code there is.
This week on the show, we have David Avocado Wolfe, who is a champion of superfoods and longevity, and he believes we need to actually grow our food. No longer just go to the supermarket and pick it up, but the relationship and the energy you get with food when you grow it is an absolute game changer. David travels the world. He's been in documentary films. He's written books. He's actually the spokesperson for Nutribullet, and he hangs out with Woody Harrelson and says he's changed his diet in a huge way. I love talking with David. We talked about everything, conspiracy theories, the flat earth, that the Clintons are actually involved in an organized crime. We went everywhere, psychedelics, ayahuasca, iboga. I really love speaking with David. I think you're really gonna enjoy this episode in a big way. So sit back and relax. It's long and strong. And inside the London Real Academy, we're working hard. You know the Business Accelerator. You know Broadcast Yourself. You know the Speak to Inspire program. Now Life Mastery is coming back. Get your 2018 sorted away. We show you how to eat. A lot of the same techniques as David Avocado Wolfe, how to move, attitude, gratitude, affirmations, all these things about your relationships. We show you how to change your life, so check it out inside London Real Academy. And now, I leave you with David Avocado Wolfe. This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is David Avocado Wolfe, one of the most prominent and long-standing voices to champion the powers of superfoods and promote the longevity multiverse. You give expert advice in health, energy, peak performance, nutrition, organic and biodynamic farming, beekeeping, and of course, chocolate. You're the author of the best-selling books Eating for Beauty, The Sun Food Diet Success System, and Naked Chocolate, and you've appeared in the documentaries Food Matters and Hungry for Change. You've shared the stage with Tony Robbins, Sir Richard Branson, and Brian Tracy, and you're the spokesperson for America's #1 selling appliance, the Nutribullet. David, it's my pleasure to welcome you to the new studios of London Real.
Fantastic. Thanks, Brian. Great to be here. And we got a lot to share. And as we were discussing, and we're going to get into, we have a similar background. How fantastic. So that's going to allow us to really, I think, go deeper because
Yeah.
we come from the same place.
Yeah, I mean, and for people just to know, we were kind of comparing notes, and we'll get into this more, but it looks like we shared high schools, and we're probably 1 degree of separation away from each other. We're 1 year apart in age, and we probably studied computer science from the same junior high school teachers, which is really wild. So look, I'm super excited to get into it. Tell me, what brings you to London, first of all? And I know you travel the world, but how does London rank when it comes to all the things that you talk about? Are we way up there? Are we way down there? What do you see when you're here?
London is a center of culture. It's a center of Western culture. London is the home of veganism in the world. To my expertise, the Vegan Society was founded in 1944 in London. And it's a home of vegetarian thinking and vegetarian peoples. The Brahmins who came over here from India, the cultural influences that have brought us a whole different way of eating are here. The raw food is so popular here. I think that maybe had something to do with the 20 years I've been coming here and doing events, maybe. But superfoods, also very popular here, and it just catches on because of those underpinnings of being able to have a different type of diet and a different look at diet, and the vegetarian diet and vegan diet, and how it's appreciated and accepted here. So I came here at the request of a friend, and it turned out to be timed beautifully well. Just wonderfully well. And an old friend of mine, Woody Harrelson, happened to be finishing up a couple of movies, and he'd been here for a year. So just by chance, I'm like, "What, are you here?" I'm like, and he's like, "Dude, I'm still here." I'm like, "Gee, dude, I'm here. I'm in Birmingham." So that was last weekend. We were up there, and then I was like, "Okay, I'll come to see you on Sunday." So we went down, and I said, "Bro, I need a place to stay next weekend for our events in London." So we stayed with him. We had a wonderful time. He left back to the USA Today after a year in London. And we really just tore it up. So I burned the midnight oil and burned that candle at both ends with a blowtorch. And we went hard for like 36 hours because I don't get to see Woody very much. And it's, great that we can be here in London together. And plus we had parties and events and all kinds of things to do.
And you've been working with him for 20 years?
20 years.
Working on his diet. And you said earlier he's one of the healthiest guys in Hollywood.
Absolutely.
Can you go deeper into that? Just the way he looks at nutrition and health and food and everything?
Well, like you and I would come from a similar background. Woody and I came from a similar background. In 1997 or 98, a friend of mine, Don Weaver, amazing guy, like a guy who's ready to save the earth at any moment. He's that guy, How do we fix the soil? How do we plant a tree? How do we make more food? How do we make it work for everybody? He sent me to Hawaii to learn farming from another friend of his. And I ended up on that farm learning farming in Hawaii, because I had grown up in California and knew farming there, because that's where we grew avocados and citrus, but never had been in the tropics doing any farming. So I did that as a little side thing, just for fun, to go out and venture, live in the jungle, and Woody was the neighbor. He was the neighbor. So he showed up there one day and we became friends, and the rest is history. And so he came from that similar culture of like from the earth, growing the food yourself, the superfoods yourself. How do you grow a chocolate tree? What's a cashew tree? Where does it come from? So not only have I grown those things for years, but so has Woody. He's grown those trees for years. Suriname cherries, all the stuff that we love. I'm thinking of his hedge in front of his place. And so we have that background that we share. So when we get together, it's like, how are we going to help his friends? Really is a lot of what we do today. It's like, look, I got a friend who's got this situation. Can you help her, bro? Just call her up. And so that happened a couple nights ago. There was a Disney producer, and she's having some health challenges. And I had to go out of this party and get into the sauna, because that was the only place that was quiet, and talk to this woman. And we connected. So I'll see her when I get to LA sometime down the road. And that's the kind of work that we do now. So we're on the same page. I know what he's into. I know the superfoods he loves, and it's basically the same stuff I love.
I heard he's a pretty fascinating guy in conversations. Like, what do you guys talk about? Everything? Science and politics and
it's
nutrition?
we've been friends for so long. You know how it is, like when you're friends with somebody so long, it's basically telepathic, right? I can just look at him at a party and be like, boom, and I get the message, he gets a message, he knows, what I get what he's saying, he gets what I'm saying without having to say a word. We've been friends that long, so it's really cool, and it's just lovely to have a friend like that, because as you get older, as you know, that it's scarcer and scarcer. You got your family, there's a few of those key friends from the old days, and that's all you got left.
Yeah, that's it. You got your work, and that's kind of it.
That's kind of it.
You mentioned growing food, and I know that was probably the start of your journey. When you left the East Coast, Brooklyn and New Jersey, and went to California. I think it was your uncle or your grandpa that taught you how to grow those first things. And That's one of the things that makes you unique that a lot of people that talk about diet is that you believe that relationship starts when you grow the food.
Yes.
And we've had actually Terence McKenna on the show, become good friends with him, and his brother Terence always used to say when it comes to mushrooms, and that's a whole nother topic we can get to, but he said, grow it, and by growing it, you get yourself into the headspace to where you want to consume it. And when you said that, that's what I remembered.
That's interesting because that's the phrase that inspired me back in the mid 90s. Was the Terence McKenna lectures that I had them digitally. And way back then, it was like, I don't remember what the format was back then, but wow. we would listen to that. And in one of those, he said that. He said, you want to learn how to understand the world? You want to understand Amazonian shamanism? Grow the plants yourself. And I went, oh, okay, boom, I'm going to grow those plants myself. And I've been doing that for 20 years. And I've learned a lot. And I've learned a lot about these plants that most people do not know. And it's like a joy. I mean, I'm a farmer. I love farming. I've been farming since 1977. So it's been a long stretch.
Most people look at farmers and they're like, oh, they're the workers that make my food, right?
Right.
Is that completely disrespectful? Are they missing the whole part of the journey of just that experience? Or do they just...
Okay, so the way I look at it is there's like an original intent. When we first showed up here on the earth, however we got here, there's like something that's very primary. And one of those things is growing food. Yeah. It's a primary experience. There's a level of fulfillment that you get from growing your own food that you can't get any other way in my experience. And that's why I love it so much, because it nourishes you at many levels. And then it expands your connection to the source of all, to life and the creative force. And watching nature grow is one of life's most extraordinary pleasures, actually. So watching trees grow, watching your garden grow, eating the great tomatoes and aubergines, as you guys say here. I'm an eggplant grower, so I love eggplant, but here they say aubergine. Growing those things is just gives you a deeper sense of what is this food really all about, and what can it do for me, and what can it do for others. So I don't feel that it's appropriate to be qualified to speak about food unless you grow it yourself, because there's such an amazing amount of information that can only be acquired that way.
And patience too.
Patience.
And respect for the process. And you probably have this kind of a weird relationship with the food as it grows.
It's just a love and a passion. Watching nature grow, seeing my orchards come into being and becoming like full-grown trees and big trees. We had an incident. So I farm in Hawaii, and I also farm in Ontario, Canada. And I had farmed for many years in San Diego, California, where we're from, and also Los Angeles, and also in the Bay Area. So I have long experience farming in Mediterranean climates. But when I got to Ontario, Canada, it's cold and the winters are cold, and finally we got lots of fruit now. And then I was looking at the tree and there was a lot of apples in my best tree. And I told Groove, who's the gal who lives with me there, she said, I think we should pick them. And I was like, yeah, we need to pick them like today. That night, the bear came. So a bear got in the yard. It cracked one of my trees in half. I was very upset. It's still cracked in half. I think that it'll survive, but it came that night because it was like too much food was sitting out there. So luckily, we only got about 15 apples, which is great. We have a couple thousand apples. But what an experience to be out there in nature and be with the animals. And you have to take that into account. That, the wolves are coming, the deer are coming, the bears are coming. It's so fun.
Right, primal.
It's primal, and it's a very important part to me of happiness, right? This connection to this fulfillment. What is that? It's happiness. It's a deep level of satisfaction. That's what I want for people. Ultimately we want to be happy, but not just like surface happy, like don't worry, be happy, but like deep level of happy and contentment and fulfillment.
I want to get to your journey that kind of started in the 90s with a lot of these things. But first, tell us, what is like a typical month in your life? Like, where are you going? What are you doing? What are the kind of things that I would experience if I would be your wingman?
Oh, wow. It's basically shamanic stuff, all nonstop, all the time. Like, for example, I'll go from here. Tomorrow we're going to go to Monaco, and we're going to visit with Novak, the great tennis player, and help him with his whole process. And I'm very excited about that, and I think he's an amazing person, and we've had great conversations, and I'm very excited to finally get there to be with him and really get him back on top of tennis. And that's what I love to do, is get people back up to number one. And then
that will consist of nutrition advice?
Nutrition advice, but also it's what I bring as the whole package is I'm very positive minded. I know what it takes to be number one. That's how I feel about my life. I've always been on the championship team. It doesn't mean that I'm like the best quarterback in the world or the best player on the team, but I have always been on the winning team and the championship team. So it's in my karma. I don't know, it's like one of those things. So I pass that along, whenever possible, to support, help, nourish, add that extra little thing that makes this upstairs a little stronger. That is the most important thing, is that in spite of the tidal wave of depression, the tidal wave of criticism, tidal wave of attacking, you just got to power through it like an icebreaker, and you just keep going. And that's what we'll do. We'll actually go from there. In Monaco, we're going to go to Reykjavik, and then we'll be in Iceland. And that's where I really like to get connected to elemental energy. So that's something to me that really nourishes longevity for me and makes me feel good and brings me to the peak of health. Okay. And so that's where we'll go next.
Elemental energy, so you're in the water there?
Right, yeah, I'll go swim in the Arctic Ocean. I'll go cold dipping into rivers, into saunas, hot springs, walking barefoot on the earth, running around outside with very little clothes on or no clothes on in the wilderness of Iceland, at friends' places. I've been going there 20 years, so I have many friends all over that country, and just getting connected with that elemental rawness. It's raw. It's potent. I could have stayed in San Diego or could have stayed in Southern California and stayed, like kind of the wispy surfer and that kind of thing. But I like the Arctic. I like the cold. I like what Wim Hof has been teaching us. I've been doing that for 20 years. He came along. I'm like, Wim, come, please, do some lectures for us. Hang out with us. Thank God I don't have to beg you to jump into cold water, because I'm usually having to beg everyone or just literally coaxing them to do it with me. Like, okay, hot springs, into the cold river, back out again. With him, he's made it easy for me. Now everyone's like, okay, we'll do it.
Do you think we need to be pushed? Do you think as humans, we just must be put in uncomfortable situations all the time to stay connected with ourselves? Because you could have hung out in San Diego and put your feet up and kick back.
Yeah, I could have. I could have lived a Southern California lifestyle as that we know so well and grew up with. But I burned out on it. There's nothing there for me. I can't go to San Diego anymore. There's nothing there. But back in those days, having learned from Tony Robbins, because Tony Robbins was in San Diego, we're from San Diego, and he taught me years ago that you need certainty and uncertainty. You need to get out of comfort sometimes and get into discomfort, and that it is uncomfortable to grow. It is uncomfortable to change your mind about things or to have a different opinion than everybody else has. It's uncomfortable. And I felt like I'm going to ride that uncomfortableness. I'm going to be with that uncomfortableness. In fact, I'm going to be the most comfortable ever in the most uncomfortable situations ever. That's the goal I wrote down.
And are you there now? Can you be kind of pleasurably comfortable in uncomfortable situations?
A lot of different situations, never all situations, but definitely you say, go jump in the Arctic Ocean. I'll go jump in that Arctic Ocean. You bet I will. Absolutely.
You mentioned Tony Robbins. My mom did the firewalk experience with him back in the 90s or maybe the 80s even, and he taught me how to break a board at something called Super Camp in like 1980 with my hand. I was like 11.
I went to Super Camp in 1984.
No.
Yes.
Seriously, I'm sure we met in the past.
Yeah, I think your brother must know my brother, because I'm thinking of your brother's name. I'm thinking, your brother knew my brother. I know it. Yeah, they were in the same class in junior high school.
So you got some great ideas from being in Southern California, hanging out with people like
Yes,
Tony.
Yes, absolutely. California is a hotbed of great ideas. It's a hotbed of abundance thinking, transformative thinking. It's a hotbed of innovation. And that's where I come from, for sure. But today, I just jump in, visit for a little bit, and out.
And back out. All right, so you're taking Novak up to Iceland, which is a place you'd like to take people to connect with the elements, to evaluate, to introduce different energies and stuff. Is it kind of your go-to place?
It's a go-to place for me. Yep. Okay. If I come to London, I'll probably get at least one stop in Reykjavik, or two if I can. I try to get two, and hang out with my friends there. My friends own a whole health food store chain there, so we got great food lined up, superfoods lined up. Of course, Iceland has the cleanest air and water probably in the world. So it's just dialed in automatically, and you feel it's a visceral feeling of just health.
Yeah. There's a great MMA fighter up there named Gunnar Nelson.
I know Gunnar.
Oh, you know Gunnar?
Yeah, I know Gunnar,
okay,
yeah.
all right, yeah.
And his coaches, and they coach Connor.
Yeah, and they go up there and train in Reykjavik.
Yeah, and they eat at the restaurants that is run by my friends who I've helped all these years, 20 years that we've been friends over, to get to that point. So in a lot of cases, and in fact, even in MMA sports, I've been a part of it in some way, shape, or form, and I love doing that because I love sports. I'm not the best athlete myself, but it's I've always been on that team. I was always good support or something. I was good communicator, maybe, I don't know. Yeah. But with the Nutribullet, with developing the foods and the restaurants and the superfoods and the formulas and all that stuff that now feed these people. So when I go to an MMA event, they recognize me, they know me.
Yeah,
it's cool.
Because they're all eating really smart as of the last 5-6 years. When it became so big, they all stepped their games up to be better, and they realized that, wow, this is a huge component. And I think mixed martial arts has got to be one of the most challenging things to do with your body. The way they make weight, the way they have to perform the next day, all of that stuff. It's brutal.
It's brutal.
Yeah.
It's brutal and inspiring at the same time that these people can take the beating and dish it out and still stay in it strategically. And then all of a sudden it's jiu-jitsu, and next thing you know it's wrestling, next thing you know it's kickboxing and Muay Thai, all at the same time.
Yeah, I love it. I've trained all those disciplines. I'm a purple belt in jiu-jitsu. And
all right.
We've had probably 10 MMA fighters on. People are just tapping out from all the MMA fighters because I love it, and I love the piece. I've had Scott Coker on, the president of Bellator and stuff like that. So I love that action. Look, I want to continue with the 3-month piece of your life, but first, you mentioned grounding when you go to Iceland. Talk to me about this concept of grounding.
We're in shoes all the time, and we're separated from the earth. Like right now, we're several floors up from the earth, and so we don't have that direct electrical connection that the earth provides. My friend Clint Ober did 13 peer-reviewed studies. He backed 13 peer-reviewed studies to test if grounding is important. Do we need to be on the earth? Is it important to have our feet barefoot on sand, on grass, on earth, and rock? And the answer is a resounding yes. It's very important. And in fact, it has a deep philosophical implication. For example, if someone's had chronic pain for years and years and years, it's basically a runaway inflammatory response. The earth neutralizes that inflammatory response. So typically, and we've been doing this and testing this, and Clint's been doing it for years, somebody has like chronic back pain, lay on the earth, go in the park, go in Regent's Park, lay on the earth, lay right on the ground, and the earth's electricity will literally push off that inflammatory response. It's literally like the negative charge of the earth pushes off the too much positive charge, that's the inflammation, and neutralizes it. So we were all taught, you come from a science background, Gompers School, where I went to, we were taught that the grounding is a drain, right? It's pulling the energy down. Yeah. Actually, it's a push. It's pushing the negatively charged electricity out of the earth right into you. So as soon as you get on the bare earth, it pushes it right into you. As soon as you go into a river, creek, stream, ocean, boom, that you're surrounded by that negatively charged electricity. The colder that the water is, the colder that the earth is, the more powerful is the electricity.
Okay. Wow, there's a lot of fighters and things that really spend a lot of time in the ocean. The Gracie family, Hicks and Gracie, surfing. There's a movie called Choke. He goes to Japan and he's out there in the cold waters of Japan, and a lot of them really feel like they need to be grounded. Sometimes I feel like these guys are a little closer to the source of knowing, like, energy-wise. So you think daily, or just definitely get your grounding in regularly?
I recommend, what I tell people is, hey, wherever you are, let's say you're in Primrose Hill, where we were staying, you gotta get an hour, a measured hour in the park every day. You need a measured hour in nature every day. If you can be barefoot for that hour, fantastic. Here's another very important piece of it. We are always around electronics. We are always around aberrant EMF fields. And how do you neutralize it? How do you get that off of you? Get on the earth. The earth's electricity is always pushing that stuff off of you, so it cleans it up. The best way to do that is get in a cold shower, or even better, get in the cold ocean. Because the cold ocean, because it's got salt in it, it's electrolytic, and it just cleans it up faster. And that also, by the way, is connected to emotional turmoil. If you get into, let's say you're, my husband, wife, whatever, significant other, kids, something freaking out, and you go through this emotional chaos, one of the best things you can do for yourself is jump into ice cold water or jump into a cold ocean. It just clears that up, because ultimately it's really an electrical storm going on up here. Right. And the ocean just neutralizes it, takes it away.
We've had Wim on about 1.5 years ago, and it was amazing to me to see how quickly he rose, because when I remember 3 or 4 years ago, I think even being like, I don't know if I want to have this guy on, he's jumping in the ice, and then I have him on the show and he's on Oprah and he's hanging out with Tony Robbins, and like everyone really embraced this cold stuff so fast. Did it surprise you how quickly people embraced that and embraced Wim? I mean, I just spent 10 minutes in a cold pool before this because I know it gets my brain back to where I need it.
Yes.
But you've been doing this for so long. Did it surprise you that this was embraced so quickly?
Yes.
Or do you think it's a component of us in this kind of disconnected Facebook culture where when we do feel something that's real, we gravitate towards
We gravitate toward it. I was surprised because I've been on it for 20 years. I've been a fanatic for the Arctic. I've been a fanatic for ice baths. I've been a fanatic for cutting holes in lakes and jumping in the middle of winter. I've been a fanatic about running around in the snow, like in my place in Ontario, Canada, with barefoot. So it starts out, you start at 1 minute, then you go 2, then all of a sudden you're doing 5. The next thing it's 10 minutes outside barefoot. And so that's been my experience. And that's hard to get people to do that with you. And it's been a battle all along. And when Wim comes on, it's like, yes, hallelujah.
Sometimes it's the messenger, isn't it?
Uh-huh.
And it's weird. Sometimes people just connect with the guy having the message, and he's the Wim Hof, he's the Iceman, and then they do it, right?
Yeah. And it's inspiring. He's inspiring. I mean, the guy's got 26 world records. Pretty soon he's going to have the world record for world records. And so it's finally that got into people's heads. They're like, oh wait, this guy's like full on. Let's do this. He's got validity just by his feats and accomplishments.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Yeah, and he's doing the immune studies and all that stuff. So, all right, so grounding an hour a day in nature, also it gets you out of this crazy constructed world of all of our straight lines and 90-degree angles.
Well said.
Okay, so that's another reason to get out there and just
Well
be
said.
with it.
Right. Actually, it's interesting because coming from that background of San Diego, we do have some similar thoughts, right? And one of the things is the fractal patterns of nature are very important for harmony. The straight line right angles of cities is disorderly and it's disharmonious, and therefore just getting that, it's like listening to death metal versus like a symphony. Not that I don't like certain types of death metal, but you know what I mean. It's like when it's disharmonic, it's disturbing. And the harmonies of nature and the patterns of nature, that's how we like to talk about permaculture and farming, is really what I'm doing with growing trees. It's patterns. We're looking at different patterns. That pattern would look good there. That pattern looks good there. This pattern is nice for over here. This pattern works for this side of the garden. It's a type of art.
Okay. So what I've been doing in the last year or so is I have a routine now where on Saturdays I go to Hampstead Heath, which is an amazing place here in London. It's called a heath, which means it's not like a park that's been designed. It's like a lot of growths and trees and stuff. And I do like my hill sprints and gets my cardio done. And then I jump in the lake there. I'm starting to see some patterns here, right? And I don't know why I do this anymore, but it just feels right. So I jump in this lake and I swim around the water, and then I walk through the trees. And I'm coming from an MIT background, and sometimes I've like, man, there's some intelligence up there and they're trying to tell me something. And I had this realization the other day where there was this huge tree, must have been 200-300 years old. And it's looking down at us and saying, okay, you humans, I know you think everything is so important to do this and do this and do this, but we're watching this up here, and it's sometimes kind of funny watching you guys. And I don't know, am I having some of these reactions that you see with your people that you know? And
I
clients?
think so, yes.
Okay.
I think what's happening is you're tuning into one of the things that makes life great, which is the subtle messages of nature. The things where you go, did I really get a message from that tree, or was that just my mind?
Yeah.
That's what makes life great. It's those little things like that where you're like, okay, maybe that was a little inspiration from that tree, or a little thought was precipitated by that tree. And what I like to say with that is, trees they're an intelligence. They are a force for good. They are magical. They have a strong influence on our inspiration. It's amazing that you even brought that up, that tree did something to you that affected you. And that's one of the things about Southern California that bothered me, is there's not enough trees. We'd get up to like Bear Valley where we went to super camp, and I remember being there. Do you remember that?
Yeah, powerful. Pine trees
And like forests, and all of a sudden, I was there in April of 1977 or 78 when In Search Of came out, and the Bigfoot episode. Remember that? Right?
Yeah.
Leonard Nimoy.
Leonard Nimoy did the voiceover.
Right?
Yeah.
And so that was all like, whatever, come on, that looked like a guy in a monkey suit or something. But then all of a sudden when I got up there in 1984 for super camp, and those trees and those mountains up in Northern California, I was like, whoa, this might be real. There might be something here. And it just activated something. And that's what forests do. They activate something. And what we like to say is, we're going to replant the great forests of the world. We're going to overgrow the government. We overgrow the government. I run a nonprofit organization that plants fruit trees every single day all over the world.
Okay. And an idea to kind of put the nature back.
I'm a fanatical tree planter. So I realized this year that if that organization didn't exist, we founded it in 2002, it's a miracle a month, every single month for 15, 16 years running. I remember this one gal, blind gal in a wheelchair, first time she ever planted a tree. You know, like those moments are priceless. We do that every month. Wow. And if that wasn't going on, I'd have to be doing it. Right? It's like, that's how much of a fanatical planter I am. It's like nonstop, always guerrilla planting. Like right now at Woody's place, a gal had come to my event and gave me a branch of a goji berry with goji berries on it. That branch will clone. So, I mean, I could stick that in the ground and it will grow. So I'm finding a place in the backyard there, in the back garden, where I'm going to pop that thing in. You know, no one has to know.
I love that, guerrilla
planting.
Guerrilla planting, that's awesome. You know, my science degree tells me the plants can't talk to me.
Right.
And yet, I'm just feeling this weird connection, and this isn't happening on a regular basis. And so, look, I'm trying to be open-minded and go with this stuff a little bit more. One other thing I'll say, because I want to get back to you what the last 3 months have been like for you. Have you ever been to the Sagrada Familia Church? It's in Barcelona, and it's still being constructed. It was one of Gaudi's vision, like 100 years. And if you go inside of that and look at this church, it's actually feels like you're in a grove of trees, because the columns are sprouted in such a way that it looks like nature and has this really weird calming effect. So
I've been in front of it. I never went in it. Okay. We got to the front of it. It was like a complete like tourist nightmare situation. So I was like, you know, I got it. It's cool. Let's go to do something else. So I've been there, but never went inside.
Okay, go inside, because the interior will confirm a lot of ideas you have.
Okay.
And the inside looks completely different than the outside. It's actually quite shocking. So, all right, good. Keep going. So
okay,
Novak, you do those kind of things with him.
I'll be with Novak in Monaco. He's not coming with me to Iceland. I'm just going to Iceland I broke my foot, so I'm going for the final rehab is kind of what that's all about.
Okay.
Then I'll jump over to Ontario, and I'll be in Ontario for Halloween and with all my crew there and everything like that. And that's, I got to pull in the last plants, because, we do indoor, outdoor, where it gets minus 40 there in the winter. You can't leave olive trees outside. So I got to bring them inside, do those kind of things, and kind of wrap everything up for the winter. Then I'll head to California, and I'll be in Southern California and Northern California, and then over to Hawaii. And then I'll be with Woody, actually, because we're going to do a long cleanse. He'd been in London for a year, and we've been talking. We did a long cleanse 2 years ago that was just awesome. I did 28 days on liquids and went through a whole longevity conference just on liquids, really on almost no food. And it's amazing. You get into really high places. We like to say nothing is better for pain. You ever heard that phrase? Take our product. Nothing else is better for pain. Nothing is better for pain. Sometimes doing nothing, like not eating or not having meals, just drinking or just drinking water, is best thing for your pain, or best thing for you, or best thing for your emotional pain, or best thing for your physical pain. And that's why we like to do cleansing. It's just sometimes you got to go in and you got to just meditate, and you just got to sit with the turmoil and be with it and sit with the discomfort. And you know how our culture is. We run from discomfort, and we run to drugs, and we run to alcohol, we run to food.
Yeah.
And
we substitute pleasure for happiness.
Yep.
And then wonder why it doesn't work.
Right.
So stressing the body, again, something that you're doing again in the way of diet. Cleanse, what would that actually look like? So you and Woody, 28 days, for example, what the kind of things that you would be doing, eating, if I watched you?
Okay, so what's going to happen is we go to liquids first. And then I have a kit at my house, so I've been saving. It's an Arise and Shine cleanse from my friend Rich Anderson, this guy's just an awesome guy. He's one of the great masters of intestinal cleansing knowledge and herbalism. And we'll do that. So we'll do his kit with the liquid. So it's kind of like doing shakes every day. You just do, like, in the beginning when you start out, you do 4 shakes, 5 shakes in a day, just to make sure you're not too hungry. And a shake's it's like, if you have 5 smoothies a day, you don't really need a whole lot more food. Gradually, as you get deeper into it, that's suddenly 4. Then it's 3. Then it's 2. Then we get down to 1 shake a day, and the rest is water. And then that's going to be a month in. And then at that point, and all during this process, we're doing enemas and colonics. We have acupuncture. We're going to have massage therapists there. And then you just keep going deeper and deeper and deeper. And yeah, you can have real lows, energetic lows where you're like, I got to lay in bed. Sorry, I can't do the yoga class. I don't have no energy. But then all of a sudden you have like second wind experiences where all of a sudden you have more energy you can even believe. You're like, you haven't eaten anything in 15 days and you're loaded with energy. You're like, how could this be happening? So this is like it's really an internal and spiritual experience. And you have to face your demons.
And what are you doing with your brain the whole time? Meditating? You having talks with Woody?
Yeah, we'll play chess or something.
Okay. Do you
We'll
stay
read
off the
books.
web and off email, or do you do a little business too?
Well, I will have to do business because it's just how I am. I have to. There's certain things I have to do, but I will gradually, as I get deeper and deeper into it, I will acknowledge my team and be like, okay, can you take over this job for me for this week? And I'm going to back off on these jobs. And if you guys can just cover for me, for an emergency happens, let me know. But I'm going to kind of just try to lay off, which you can get there later as you go in. And that's the most difficult part of cleansing, especially the first few weeks. As you get into it, you have to gradually do the work, and you can't hide from the difficulties of the work by, let me distract myself with eating. Let me distract myself with dinner. You just have to stay in it, and that is really one of the most difficult things it is for me anyway.
Right, and then you don't distract yourself with social media as well, so you just take that away, and then you have to be with yourself.
You have to be with yourself, yeah.
Right, which is where all the learning comes, the growth comes, and sometimes the discomfort, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you mentioned longevity. What is your stance on longevity? How long will you be living? And, 100 years from now, how long will the rest of us be living? Because if you look at America right now, it looks like it's going lower and lower every year.
Well, it's going to go lower and lower every year for some people depending on their belief system. And it's going to go higher and higher for others depending on their belief system, which is going to precipitate different actions, right? Our belief system is all made up. We just buy into stuff. We're like we were taught science background, so we just believed it all. And we're like, okay, and then we make certain actions based on those belief systems. Later, and we've all had this experience where we found out that it's something we believed for 20 years would turn out to be wrong. It's like, wait a second, maybe everything I believe turned out to be wrong if I really looked at it. So what I like to say is, we like to entertain possibilities. I'm not into believing things, right? Do you believe in this? It's like, no, I entertain that as a possibility, and that could also be possible. And I try to stay away from that because that allows me to take different types of actions. Okay. Now, one of the things I do entertain is that we could live a lot longer than we do. We might be able to live 140. We might be able to get to 160. It's possible to get to 200 or longer. It's possible. And that has caused me, just that entertaining that possibility has caused me to look at places I wouldn't have looked at before, and also to take actions I wouldn't have taken before. And one of those actions is not only the cleansing and dietary strategies, and one of the things I haven't mentioned is the charcoal. The charcoal is in animal research, nothing extends life longer than charcoal, which indicates that detoxification is more important than nutrition, because charcoal is not nourishing you, but it's a drawing agent. So it's drawing off metabolic toxins and toxins we're breathing in, other toxins in our environment. But when we get really deep into, okay, we're looking at the overall picture, and we're looking at the overall possibilities of longevity, you can't get into it without looking at stem cells. Stem cells come in. And I had to go through that process of having my stem cells extracted out of my bone marrow, and it was uncomfortable because I'm not into, both my parents are doctors. I'm not into doctors and hospitals because of the things I'd seen as a kid. Okay. And I had to put myself through that because I entertained the possibility that if I have my stem cells banked, and that if I could take my stem cells and keep them at the levels that they were when we were 16 and 17, then we can feel like we're 16 and 17 again. I've experienced that, and I know that's true. So I'm glad I did that, but it was uncomfortable.
They go into your hip with a needle. And there's no anesthesia for it.
They put you on propofol is the best thing. It's an alcohol anesthetic. Okay. And I felt it go in. I didn't feel the pain, but you feel like, oh, there's a thing sticking in my hip, and it's like a weird sensation. And I am to a bit large degree not happy with needles and not happy with any of that. So, but I put myself through it because I entertained the possibility that, hey, maybe with stem cells we could get somewhere big and major. Some of my friends, Peter Nygaard, amazing self-made billionaire, very interesting guy, and we've been friends for 15, 20 years. And all these years I've been, you got to go organic, Peter, please. You got to get off this sugar. You got to get off this toxic stuff. And finally, he listened. And step by step, he listened. And then when his mom passed, who was also friends with me and my family, he really changed. And he was like, whoa, I'm mortal. I could die. And he started looking at all the different stem cell strategies out there. Now he does about 4 of them a year. I'm young enough, I do 1 a year.
Okay, one injection of your stem cells back into you.
Yes, okay, so let me explain that a little bit, because people are like, okay, what embryonic stem cells? What kind of stem cells? Right. Basically, the best stem cells for you are you. The best stem cells definitely would be your umbilical cord and placenta. And we don't have that, unfortunately. I don't know if you have your placenta and umbilical cord.
No, but just had a son, and they said, do you want to keep the umbilical cord and placenta? And I didn't know that I should have.
Oh.
So, okay, next one.
Okay, but I got a backup plan for that. That's okay. Because the dental pulp of a young child, you can get the sample from there and freeze that. And then when that child is now your age, or our age, then you have that sample frozen. That's like really a lot better than an older stem cell that they would extract out of us now.
Okay.
So the idea is you want to get the stem cells out as young as possible, so that you have you at that youngest age, the healthiest, most vigorous forces. Rudolf Steiner called them ethereal forces, the water forces, the juiciness of youth. Anyway, they take that out, and then the first treatment is they're going to take part of that, freeze it, so we have that forever. Okay. They're going to take part of that, goes to the lab. That's about it. So let's say they take 8 ounces out. 1 ounce goes to the freezer, 1 ounce goes to the lab, 6 ounces goes right back into your blood. Okay. So the first treatment is this, and in my opinion, most powerful medical procedure going, most important thing ever, and I want every hospital to be doing this, and I hope we can break through the medical monopolies and mafias that we're all facing, because they're blocking this in westernized countries. That's why we go to Mexico to get this done. Right. It could be done in Baltimore, Maryland, Washington, D.C., New York City, London, but we have to do medical tourism. That's okay.
Because there's people stopping it because they don't understand it, or they want to own it.
Yep.
Okay.
Or they have other things they'd rather, that we've got these drugs and we don't want that competing.
Right.
Anyway, so what happens is that we know from now have an angle on aging that we didn't have before. Your stem cells, like with my mom, when she had that treatment done, she was rejuvenated. Within 4 hours, she's trying to choke Hulk Hogan out. No kidding, because we were there with Hulk Hogan. And my mom is, I'm not going to say her age, but if I said her age, I would be paying for that for the rest of my natural born life, which hopefully would be over 200 years. But even my mom, when she had that done, she literally jumped up on the chair, jumped on Hulk Hogan's back, and I have never seen my mom do that at any age, ever. She completely forgot she was in a wheelchair. She completely forgot she was arthritic. And that blew my mind. It blew everybody's mind. Because when you get that bone marrow into your blood, you're basically doing what your body's trying to do anyway. Your body's always, and always has been, trying to migrate the new you out of the progenitor cells that are inside your bone marrow and migrate those into your blood. And as we age, that gets disturbed. Okay. We know that now. And all we're doing is we're just bypassing. We're just saying, well, it's disturbed. We can't get the juice out, so let's take it out and then put it in the blood. So that first treatment is really powerful. I had a bad tooth in the back of my thing I cracked it on a hamburger when I was 14 years old, of all things.
Wow.
In San Diego. I'm not going to say the name of the.
Okay.
You know where it is, and it's in Grossmont.
Okay.
Fudd.
Oh yeah, Fuddruckers.
You remember it?
Yeah, I do. Okay.
And there was a bone in it, and it cracked my back tooth, and that tooth was never right since then. I had a mercury filling put in. 10 years later, I was like, I got to get this mercury out, and I had a composite put in. The dentist was like, I don't know, man, it's not going to work. And I was like, just try. He tried, it didn't work. A year later, it fell out, and I was like, you know what? That's my best dentist. He can't fix it. I'm going to leave it. Because I suspect that maybe our teeth could heal themselves, because we're told, no, it can never heal itself. And I was like, I've seen evidence it can. So I'm going to go with it can. And it did. And for 20 years, I lived with that broken tooth, but I could chew on it. It was normal. I was like, okay. Then a couple pieces broke off, and in like 2013, and the pain started, and it went for a year. And you know how dental stuff is. It gets worse, right? And it kept getting worse and worse and worse. I was like in cold sweats going, dentist is like, we got to pull it. And I'm like, no, I know there's something. I hung on. Well, I didn't know until after I had my first stem cell treatment that stem cells have a very strong effect on renewed dental health. And 5 days after my first treatment, that pain went away, never came back.
Wow.
You know how dental stuff is. It gets worse. Somehow this made it get better. And I was like, I got chills right now. That woke me up. I started going, whoa.
Okay.
And so then now I've been going back. I think I've had 5, but they don't have to go into my bone anymore.
They can replicate it.
They replicate. So they take 10,000 cells out, a little tiny little piece of frozen bone marrow juice, and say it has 10,000 stem cells in it, and they multiply that to 300 million in an IV bag over 4 or 5 weeks, and then you go in and just get an IV, and that's it. It takes 20 minutes, you're done.
Continue watching this fascinating conversation for free by clicking on the link below to visit our website, and I'll see you on the inside.
The reason why they're so upset at me and why they have to call me a pseudoscientist and insult me and all that is because what I'm going after is their religion. Their atheistic, scientismic religion. And to them, this scientism, with Big Bang, we're a naked killer ape, we're killing each other, with survival of the fittest. Who survives? The fittest. Who are they? The ones who survive. Who are the fittest? The ones who survive. Who survives? The fittest. It's a tautology. You can use it to explain any set of data. Right? Why did they survive? Oh, because they were the fittest. Okay, why were they the fittest? Oh, because they had this adaptation over here. Oh, okay, but that can't predict that adaptation would occur beforehand, so therefore it's not really scientific, because scientism is basically co-opting the predictive power of the scientific method.